Hey, good morning. Happy Friday to you. This is Michael Goldberg, and welcome to a special edition of the LinkedIn Live Breakfast Hour. Normally, we're on Tuesdays at the lunch hour, but today it's eggs and toast and coffee and juice and water
Well, no sausage gravy or
to get your
grits.
day going. And I can't believe we are already ready.
All right.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm from South Carolina, so let's add the grits. I haven't had grits in a long time. Can you make shrimp and grits, Doug Thompson?
Yes, we do. That's actually one of my wife and I did that for Christmas when didn't have the kids and stuff over a few years back, and yeah, we like that a lot.
The question is, do you do it with the sausage and the tomatoes and the shrimp?
We don't put the sausage in it, but we do have the tomatoes. You do have the shrimp. You do have lots and lots of cheese to go along with it.
Try some sausage, like some chorizo, not chorizo, but like some good Italian little kick to it sausage.
And my wife likes it. I'm not a big fennel fan. I can sort of pick that out of anything. So I have the Italian sausage piece of that. But
all right, well, or
just, that and asparagus. I have trouble with both of those. I love asparagus, but I've got that gene that,
yeah. Well, we all have that. Is that an option? Like some people can eat asparagus and not.
I read a story that said that you have to have a specific enzyme to manufacture that odor. And I've talked to people that doesn't impact like that. I can look at asparagus and automatically get that done. So, but it's an enzyme. But I was always wondering if it was an enzyme for you to smell, or anyway, that we're going down this rabbit.
Yeah, everybody's left already. I'm kidding. Yeah. So we're not here to talk about enzymes, fennel, asparagus, or grits. No, we're here to talk with Doug Thompson, who works for one of my favorite companies out there, and I'm a Microsoft man myself. Doug Thompson, you are the AI guy, one of the AI guys for.
I'm glad you specified that, because there's a lot of people way smarter than I am about this.
Well, that's good. Well, what I like is you have this podcast, and was it tech-splaining or tech story podcast, and then but you say here in your banner, tech-splaining through story. Yeah, and that's a really hard skill to have as a technologist, don't you think?
It's a rare skill that people have handily. I mean, it's in my role, my particular role at Microsoft, the AI guy thing is sort of a side extra credit thing that we get. But my main job is a technical strategist, which is sales nerd, and in that I need to know sort of what all of our products do from an end-to-end perspective. And then be able to sort of map that to a business need. And in there, you have the need to talk in the language of your customer, it could be a marketing officer, it could be a compliance officer, it could be any of these different things. So, the old days of where you only talk to IT to sell something or talk about it, where it was nerd to nerd, that tech-splaining was okay. That was expected. We can do a processor, how many more, how fast is it? Can you overclock it? Those things. But now when you're talking to a business owner, they don't care about the technology and don't understand it. So you have to sort of use that language to relate to them. And that's where when we're trying to hire people into similar roles like mine, we found out just a skill that was lacking. And so I started my mission in life now is to sort of end tech-splaining by giving, talking to fellow nerds that want to learn how to, for both, either in sales or even, inside, if I'm an engineer and I want to sort of do, my algorithms, but how do I convince people or things like that. So that's my goal, and to sort of end that and use through storytelling. And I find in my podcast that I talk to the most interesting conversations I have are with storytellers. And it's the best way to get information across. Our brains are wired for it as a human. This goes back to the caveman days. Even before we had language, if you go back and you talk about the cave drawings, those all painted pictures of a story. Even before we had a language, we were sort of learning from stories. So it's a great skill. They just don't teach it. And, I've always loved stories. So it just sort of came to me, not naturally, but I just was sort of drawn to it.
Well, and I think that that having a story, whether you're interviewing for a job or whether you are trying to explain technology to somebody, if you can create a connection for somebody when you're telling a story, you're going to be so much better off than if you're sitting there going, well, it does this and it does this and it does this and it does this. That's boring. But if you add a little spice to it and say, all right, think of it as, you're making cookies from scratch, right? You're going to take the dough, and here we go back on food again. Chocolate chips, you're going to take the oatmeal, however you're going to make, right? That's all, to me, how I look at technology. Technology is just it's a recipe, and it's formed by all these different components that all these super duper smart people will sit there and program. We don't need to know about those zeros and the ones. We just need to make sure at the end of the day it works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, that all technology ideally should fade into the background. It gets to be more about the process and what it does for the customer, both yours and whoever you're designing it for. I think every day when I as a consumer come up to things from a technical perspective, like, well, today, so I was doing an app. I was trying to register my truck on the Mopar app to check on something. And I was going in and I was trying to reset my password and it said, okay, so I do it the first time. I've got one of those password managers. So I let it calculate the password, and I've got, all the things in there, widgets, chocolate chips, and everything else that you can put in a password. And I was pasting it in and it said, okay, congratulations, you've changed your password. Well, no, at first you couldn't put special characters. So I redid it. And I pasted that in. Okay, everything good. Congratulations. I get this congratulations email that I changed my password. And I go put it in, and it was a 20-character one, which apparently is too long. So I had to go back and do a 16-character one into it. So it took me 3 or 4 tries, but the experience was horrible. And it was like, the message you get back is let's think about your end user. And I understand this. I live in and that's the problem I think a lot of times is, and Microsoft was very guilty of this much in the past, is we design things the way that we as smart people, engineers, thought you needed to have. Right. This is what you need. Well, no, that's not necessarily what I need. I'm a consumer. I have my own things. And so if you think about the persona or the customer story, so thinking about that, what is their experience? What are they going to, if anybody else would have given up on this changing the path, just to, screw it, I'll just go on with it. But, that to me is, as I think about it, what would be a better story? How would I design this better so that, the experience was just much better, much better story from a customer service perspective.
Yeah. And so let's go into your area of expertise, which is AI. I'm always fascinated by it. It's funny. And I know you don't have enough knowledge about the recruiting world, but in the recruiting world, all the new buzzword, if it, does your applicant tracking system or does your CRM have AI? You're like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And people know what AI is. I know what AI is, but when you start asking them to show you the AI and the functionality of AI, they can't show you. Is that common in the industry that a lot of people will throw that out as buzzword bingo for a presentation?
I think it happens way too often that we come in and say, oh, yeah, it's got AI. Well, AI, it could go back as simple as Siri or saying, hey, you need to leave now, right? It's something we do every day. But getting back to the story piece of this, that should be integrated into it. Here's what AI is doing for you. So let's talk about, we're scanning all these resumes that go into the system. And, one, you were looking for keyword search, which is not really AI. That's simply doing an index, a Boolean search, if you will. Does it have these keywords? And fine, I can load up a resume with keywords and it pull it up on your end of this. And again, this is simply my experience, the way I think that it's been used. Now, if you're using artificial intelligence in this, you would want something a little bit broader. Okay, so they have these keywords, but what else do they have in there? And a lot of it's about learning, to truly program an AI interface for the what are you trying to accomplish? So we get all these resumes. What we'd really like to get out of it, talking to an HR professional, is we really, regardless of these keywords, because we're not getting the results we want, We want somebody that gets the product, that can tell, say in this case, you're looking for a sales nerd, somebody that can tell a story, somebody that's had success in that in the past and doing this. So you can look at the resume and look for things a little bit broader than that. But then also, hey, let me go see if this guy's got, let's look on the resume. Here's a LinkedIn page. Let me automatically, as part of my intelligence, go out and look at the LinkedIn page, see if it validates and goes on. Is there anything else? Do they have videos that are interesting, or have they done video? So you could put all these different things that you're looking for into the AI algorithm, which is much broader than simply searching that. And that would give you a richer experience. So basically you're looking at taking maybe the first or second layer of the recruiting, having that initial conversation, finding out, well, you got all these keywords, but you really can't do anything. So how that is, to me, I think that would be helpful. I mean, again, I may be wrong, but I think that would be more helpful to them because say, for example, you have just a basic resume, you have the keywords, but you have no LinkedIn profile or anything like that. That's probably not the person that you want. Anyway, so that's just me thinking what a customer would want.
Well, and there's a lot of AI tools out there, right, for recruiting. But what's funny is that AI, what people don't, I think people expect, AI is just supposed to automatically generate, but it's not, AI doesn't work that way. It takes some time to build up that intelligence. Especially if you're looking, whether it be job seekers or if you're looking at your, different ERP systems, what is the data trying to tell you? And then how is the machine really figuring out, if it's this customer, then this is what they're going to want. And we're going to suggest this. And since they're suggesting this, we're probably also going to suggest that, right? It takes time, right? It's not something that happens overnight, right?
Yeah, and the data scientists that are creating the model or creating the input to the model and doing the training. So that all comes back into, all this. AI is only smart as the algorithm and the training that went into it. And I'll use an example here that it's been around for a bit, but when you were doing photo recognition for an AI, and we're trying to prove something between, here's a dog and a wolf. So they're close enough, but you can usually tell the difference between the two of them. And so they went through this training, thousands and hundreds of thousands of pictures went into the training of this model. And, in the testing, the percentage of hit rate was pretty good. So released it out, and out in the wild, though, the hit rate went down to less than 50% of guessing what it was correctly. And it was like, okay, what happened? Well, think about the pictures that you see. When you see a picture of a wolf, what's typically in that picture?
Wolf is either they're in their natural habitat, and they generally are looking up at the sky and howling. That's generally what is that what you're looking for?
Habitat. You're on the right track. Describe the natural habitat.
Well, the natural habitat's either at a Yellowstone or Yosemite National Park, or there's a mountain that's drawn in between them, or they could be in a pack of wolves. Mm-hmm. It's not just one wolf, but it's them out there doing what they do regularly. It's their natural behavior.
And some of that, a lot of those pictures, when I think about it, I think they usually have a snowy background, and these, it's sort of winter. It's always winter, and these things. So what was actually happening was the algorithm, or the model was trained to recognize snow in the background, because almost all the pictures that were used for wolves had snow in it. So that was a much easier thing to pick out. So that's the bias, and that's the way that you train the model. That's why it got it so wrong, because people would put pictures of wolves during summer when it wasn't snowy outside. They thought it was a dog. So so that's the risk that you have, is if you're not in there talking to your customer, getting what do you want to get out of it? What is your biggest need where AI can sort of help? And usually it's ferreting out to find that ideal candidate. How can we expand these things? And so that's where it would be important to talking to the person, the data scientist, and being very clear about, here's the things we're looking for. What does a human do? So ideally, AI is not meant to replace humans. at least that's the way we look at it here at Microsoft, is it's meant to augment and help humans make better decisions. So we don't want Starnet, Skynet and Terminator, and we don't want Arnold coming naked in our driveway anywhere, right? So we want to help us make better decisions. And that's where you really have to get in and say, okay, look, and like you were the example that you've got, and AI is used with us all the time. If you look ad searches and stuff on that, if you start looking for, say, like a new car, you start seeing ads for that car everywhere. That's because it's learned, the model's learned, okay, if you're looking at this and you're looking, like you said, and you're doing this, then let's show this, right? It's annoying as hell sometimes, but that's just one example.
Yeah, no, I love that example. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Is we expect, so, and I think people have this misconception that AI is also related to automation, and the two are totally separate, I think. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, you can have automation that has AI incorporated into it, but you can have automation too that's just, and we've had that on the factory floor of like putting a car in forever, right? I mean, it says, okay, you go in and you put this piece on, you weld it here, here, and here. It doesn't really use anything outside of that. There could be some tolerances and stuff, but that's just simply programming a bandwidth. But yeah, AI makes decisions based off other factors, and it's outside of what, than simply an automation. So yeah, it is easy to mix up the two. You can have automation without AI, and you can have AI without automation, but you don't, they together. Now it would be a little bit better, because then AI would say, hey, this is a little bit out of tolerant. Maybe I up the amperage, or there's different ways that you could do it.
Absolutely. What I like about you and your about section is, number one, short and sweet. But you AI is, you say AI is already here. The question is, how will it be used to drive innovation forward? And then how will AI be used to unlock innovation, because it's going to be moving at a gazillion miles a second. So let's answer that question. How is, if you can talk about this, how is Microsoft building AI to drive innovation forward, not only with their tools and apps, but with other systems that they're interacting with?
Yeah, I mean, we incorporate it into a lot of different things, and some of it is innocuous, as being able to translate language real time, where you're going in, and if you like, some of the improvements we've made to Word is I can now upload an audio file and it will do the transcription for me through this, and it goes through, it's artificial intelligence, and that it has been trained and it knows these other things in the background, but it also learns as it goes along and keeps adding to that base of knowledge that it is, so maybe I do a transcription, and I use grits, and I do it as a true Southerner where it's got 14 syllables. AI may have a little bit of trouble with that. I have to sort of learn to, okay, in this case here, again, taking all these other things, my daughter Brown has 4 syllables, it's true Southerners, you get this dialect in it. It's how do you learn from that, and using AI into something like that, but it's pretty innocuous. So we try to incorporate things like that, again, to augment what humans do. And if you look at our Dynamics product with CRM, it's just, okay, how do we forward an engagement? Hey, this customer has gone in and registered for this conference, and then you may want to talk to them about ABC. These are new things that come up, because with the speed of change that we have, it's sort of hard for us to know everything. Right. And sometimes we'll rely on that AI to be a prompt. Again, augmenting what we do, not replacing what we do.
I mean, if you look at one of your tools, which some people may know or may not know, but LinkedIn is a part of the Microsoft family. And I think that they do a pretty good job. I wish they did a better job of getting rid of the fake profiles, using AI to get rid of fake profiles. I don't know if you know about that or not, but there's...
I get those requests from somebody that's got like 5 followers, and they're They're the head chef at Head Chef.
Right.
That
Right.
helps a lot.
So does that play into if, like, let's say, and because I get a lot of LinkedIn requests to either invest in Bitcoin, invest in a franchise, 10x my lead list. If and what I'm starting to do on LinkedIn for all you salespeople out there is I'm starting to look to see what you do in your headline before I accept it. If I click ignore, is there something in the algorithm that says, hey, Michael doesn't want to talk to these people if they're in the following category?
I don't know. Again, LinkedIn's are sort of we let them do their own thing. They're their own by us, but we pretty much try to let.
How about just in AI terms?
No, but you're right. I mean, I would like to see less of this. So like use Instagram, for example. So as they curate your list and stuff, you can say, I'm not interested in this, and hopefully you see less of it. So I would like to think at some point in time you can, but here's the risk, is they may have that, right? They may have, Bitcoin way down in their profile or something. You'd have to program and say, okay, well, it's not on their tag. So there's always ways that you can game it. It's like the algorithm of who you see on your feed. That should be curated on who that you engage with. So it is a catch-22, but I would like that. Just simply say, look, I've ignored every one of these people. If they've got less than 15 contacts in these, I understand I run the risk of missing out on a truly valuable connection, but 99.9% of them aren't that valuable connection. There's some fake profile that comes in to go do things. So that's a good use case for it. I just don't know where it's at.
Yeah, no, it's just more in general terms that it should be. What so when you're do you and I agree with you, I don't think AI will ever replace humans.
We haven't gotten the singularity yet. That's that old thing that they talk about, the singularity where AI can, if you look at it today, there's a lot of times we interact with AI, we don't necessarily know it. I saw a story the other day where this AI, artificial intelligence, used to write a story. And as I read the story, because there's talking about like replacing news, and if you could get the bias out of it and replace some of the news reporting that went on, that would be great. But that's a whole other, we could spend all day on that. But it wrote the story and it was grammatically correct, and it did have somewhat, but to me, it was like grits without butter and salt. It was just plain. It was correct. You could do it, but it just was not a rich story for me. It didn't ring with me. So I could still tell, and it's still along, the human brain's very complex in the way that it works. And there's those little nuances that you don't necessarily pick up on, you don't consciously think about, but unconsciously you say, something's not right here. So we haven't reached that parity yet. I hope we never do, because then my need to being a storyteller sort of moot at that point. But it does get better. We do constantly learn new things, and they are getting better. But I think as humans, again, being as complex as we are, that we can pick up on those little nuances if we listen to it, right? If we're that little voice in our head, if we just don't simply click through it, like an end user license agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
So walk me through how you tell your stories with technology. I'd love to, do you have a specific example you could share with how you help take something as intangible as technology, besides the computer and the phone and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There's no one model that I have. I try to create, when I'm talking about a story, so the structure of the root of it, if you would have similarities across the things I use. But the very first thing that I do is try to learn who my audience is. And this is whether I'm on stage doing a presentation. I may have done the same title of the presentation 100 times, but I guarantee you I've done it differently 100 times. because I always try to put a little local flavor to it or something that's a little bit more current or something. So I'm trying to learn who the audience is, first of all, because I find the most successful stories start where the reader or listener is. So they're starting from the world that you know, or the environment that you're in, because that's my frame of reference, especially if you're a sales person or you're simply trying to get a point of view across. We're starting, you may have a little interest, but you're not necessarily where I am. And hopefully you're not, or you wouldn't have me on stage to do it if you were exactly where I am, because then we're just simply agreeing with each other. There's no difference in perspective. And so I'll call it LinkedIn stalking. I'll look at around, what are you talking about? What's your social media is going on? And it's not meant to do in a creepy way. But it's like, okay, what's Michael like? What's he thinking about? What's he engaging on? What's his typical, if he has comments and engagement, what are they sort of going on? What is he passionate about? What's it, does he like sports? Does he, does he have a family? Does he have all, because the more information I can gather from that, I can then think of different hooks into the story, which would get you interested. Because when you're talking to somebody, you have about 2 minutes before, as humans, we're kind. We'll give you about 2 minutes before we either decide we're going to check out and do email if we're on that, or we're going to actually listen to what's going on. And so I want something in that first 2 minutes to have the hook to say, yeah, Doug understands me. He's got an interesting point about that. And it's not meant to be cheap, or there's other things, but it's meant, okay, let me introduce you. Let me get into your realm. Hello, I'm knocking at the door. I want to get into your world. I understand a base level enough about one of your passions. Maybe it's golf. Maybe it's, I have people, if behind me, you see, I've got some triathlon posters that people that understand that will talk about triathlon, or I'll report back. Again, it's a starting point to start that conversation. But if you think about it, everybody that you ever met, everybody that's a close personal friend of yours, you had something in common. They did something, and that started the conversation. So I'm using that same technique in there to understand a little bit what's going on, to get their frame of reference. And then also I ask a lot of questions. It's, what is your current, challenges you're facing, or what's your everyday look like? What do you wish, in a perfect world, barring anything, what would it look like? What would these things look like? And that then gives me an end point. Are there ways that I can tell a story, the technology that we have, how it can help meet that? And I try to avoid any explanation of how the technology in the back end works. And it can say, they say, well, we want to go through our resume pool, and we want to get better candidates and not have our first level recruiters have to spend hours talking to candidates that really don't meet that. Is there something we could do? And it's like, in this, again, making some stuff up here, our product would go in, and we can use artificial intelligence to sort of help do that. And here's how we do it. We looked at their LinkedIn profile, or I'll ask a question. How do your recruiters do it today? Do they do a secondary check to go in through LinkedIn? Do they look at these other things? Again, asking questions, because the more information I have, the better my story can be. And it's more personal. I can tailor it a little bit on that. So it's asking those things. And I'm a polymath as well, which means I have a lot of different interests, which helps makes it easier for me to understand where I can start the story. And at the very base level, I may use a story about a car and driving, because almost everybody, at least in the US, is at a car driving, so I can create an analogy or metaphor for what we're talking about that's in their frame of reference. And then over time, I can take them, I draw them closer to where I need them to go, which is maybe into the product, show them a demo, show them these other things. But it's a journey, and there's no, I think in story. So as I'm gathering information, I'm trying to assemble this story in my head. And again, it may be a different iteration of the same basic core message that I have. So that's a long-winded discussion to say I sort of make it up on the fly.
Well, why don't you just start with that? But I like it, right? I mean, nothing can be done. We tend to do things on the fly as it is anyway, right? So, kind of bear with me. The dog.
The process is, what are the things that you're using to build the thing on the fly? Is it simply a script that I've been taught from some marketing slide or something that goes X, Y, Z, which doesn't really necessarily resonate with the end user or the customer? Or is it something that I've personalized for them? It's like a tailored suit.
And then the question is how does that tailored suit fit with you? And I think that's where, when people are looking at technology, when they're looking at, bringing in tools that are going to help them bring more data and information to the table, people get excited about the AI. What questions should one be asking about? If a vendor says, "Oh, and this is fully AI, capable," blah 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 blah. Okay, what do you recommend? Like, how do we dig through that so we don't feel like we're being fed a bunch of baloney?
Ask them, how does it accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Just give me, if you can't explain it like to a fifth grader, how AI is sort of using intelligence from, say, LinkedIn and Monster or what, say all these different social media things, just using an example. If you can't tell me at a very high level that I'm pulling data in from these other things that sort of triangulate, and does it match? Does it make sense? So just like a human, how are you as a human making these decisions to move on to the next stage? And that's how I would explain that to me. If they can't explain that to you, they're probably talking to a marketing side. They're probably talking so, ideally you want people that can tell that story, then how it works. So you at least need to know that it's just not simply saying it's got AI, because it could have, in truth and link, you could have AI that simply says, okay, well, this is the color we should use, and based off these other things, which is not really that helpful. It doesn't necessarily solve my problem.
Right. Do most technologies solve our problem these days?
Or technology causes a lot.
That's what I was going to say.
You get the problem. One of the bigger problems I have is a lot of times I'll get very dependent on it. So like if my phone dies, my life sort of comes to a screeching halt, because there's so many different pieces of technology in there from a password perspective that I use, so we do get dependent on it. And a lot of, back to your point, I think you're asking, somebody will make a decision to buy a product or service simply because it's in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. That's sort of the,
right.
That nobody gets fired for doing that. That's the old way of thinking. And it has AI, it has all the buzzwords, but it doesn't really, they haven't done it where it solves the problem they're trying to solve. It all gets back down to, what am I trying to enable some new experience, or am I trying to solve a problem that I have? And a lot of times they'll buy that. And here's the bigger challenge. And I go through this. This is a transformational thing I discuss a lot in my digital transformation talk, is if you don't change the culture, okay, the culture, there's the old Peter Drucker thing that says he didn't say, but, culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. So if you're making a strategic purchase, but you're not changing the culture to accept and use it, a lot of times we get new technology it's very hyped up for about 3 weeks, and we go back to the way we're always doing it.
Right. A lot of people call it change management. I call it change ownership. Are you willing, if you're going to get a new piece of technology, or you're changing the way you do business today, who's owning the change process? Right. And I think what happens is, and it's classic in a lot of situations that I know of, where recruiters and HR professionals will understand about 20% of their HR management system or their applicant tracking system. But what about the other 80%? If you happen to learn at least 80% instead of because nobody understands you to expects you to understand. But the first questions I'm asking is, how's it going to make my job easier? And I'm going to make sure I've got all those buttons turned to on. Yeah. And that I can make it easier for me. It can be easier for the candidates. It can be easier for managers. If it's some kind of reporting or other piece of information that they need. And I think when I'm sitting helping companies or figure out the technology that they want, it's got to be right with their culture. And to your point, and it's also it's got to be something that everybody's excited about. Because I've seen it happen too many times. You'll buy the technology, and then either they're not using it or they're not excited about it.
And I'll go back to a big culture change. So I've been at Microsoft almost 20 years. I went through the end of the Gates, into the Ballmer, now into Satya's leadership, and it's taken a while. Satya, it was 6 years ago, I guess it was, but he's come on board and he's really changed what the culture and mindset and stuff is. You still will find occasional pockets of some of that older fixed mindset, but it's very few and far between. But it's now about listening to what the customer has. There was that mindset where we said, hey, we're smart, we're engineers. This is what Windows is going to look like. And now a lot of the features and services we put in are based off customer feedback. So that was a big culture change to know, hey, we're not the smartest person in the room. Our customer should be the smartest person in the room for what they want to see in their products. So that is a cultural mind shift that saved the company. The stock's done very well. And we've done that. If we would have kept on that same path, not changing the culture, we'd have been, pretty much irrelevant today.
Here's a question for you, sir. Is the Microsoft vision in alignment with Bill Gates' current project of linking cryptocurrency with human activity?
I don't know enough about that. Cryptocurrency, that one, I didn't even know he had that on there. So I can't answer that question. Again, we do have a committee and stuff that our artificial intelligence stuff goes through for just because we can do something with technology, should we do it? So that is a key question that we ask a lot. So I don't know about this. There's a lot from a cryptocurrency. I'm taking a class, an MIT class right now about blockchain and all these other things. So I think the underlying structure of blockchain can help some things out. Cryptocurrency is not my area of expertise. And by the way, that's one of those things when you're connecting with me on LinkedIn that I tend to ignore when it comes on.
Most of the time they'll ask you if you want to buy the cryptocurrency blockchain.
So I can't answer that question. It's an interesting.
Here's
thinking about it.
There's your answer. He wants to see all human activity by sending the.
I can't. I don't know.
He's saying he's got a patent. Hey, Brian, we believe you.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing that. Again, I've not been.
Doug is not involved. Well,
I can't speak to it.
And Bill Gates, I mean, call me crazy. He's really kind of out of the day to day and out of the.
Oh yeah.
Is he still the chairman? I assume he's still the chairman.
I think he actually stepped down from that.
I thought he parted ways from Microsoft altogether.
Well, he's still a large stockholder, and
obviously, but in terms of the day to day and the
but no, it's Satya Nadella and the board is doing all those decisions and stuff now. So
he's saying it's about it's not about cryptocurrency. It's seeing everything we do. Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion.
I mean, there's other companies that see a lot more about what we do. that are at least when we're
watch the Social Dilemma, and then you'll learn who that company is.
We're very, one of the things, since we're not really in the consumer space per se, like some of the competitors and stuff, the data and stuff is we have very clear privacy and protection policies about customer data. And it's, the question we ask, why are we collecting it is the very first thing. And do we need to, and how long do we keep it, and these other things that go along. So we have very serious, and we have these trainings every year about that, very privacy and keeping that stuff private. So I think we're good stewards of that. I mean, it is a tracking, that's very big brotherish. Mm-hmm. That does make me nervous, and I don't know anything about that. So
yeah, it makes me nervous too. So I know that we're wrapping up here, so time always goes by so quickly, but I know you have a podcast. Tell us about the podcast, when it airs, how they can listen.
Sure. So it's a Tech Story podcast. So you can get there. It's on all the major platforms, or techstorypodcast.com is the website of it. I just finished my first season. There's 21 episodes. And I started out wanting to sort of talk about a little Mike Rowish, where we talked about the story behind the technology. And I still like that. But as I got to going on, I started interviewing great storytellers. And that's really what excited me about different things, but it's their story or the things that they do. So I'm working on the second season now. I'm recording that, which will be released sometime about January, early January. And I do it weekly. I drop an episode a week. But it's really designed. This next one is I'm going to be having actors, and I'm going to be having writers. I'm going to be having producers, and I want to get their sort of vision and tell a story from different angles. as a writer, when you're writing up a story, what are you thinking about? What are you doing? So back to your original question, I'm asking me how I think about a story when I'm talking to somebody. These are all tools that I use, and a lot of it's unconsciously. So I want to be able to sort of extract that to say, here's how this could be used in telling a story in your day-to-day life or in these other things. So that's what season 2 will be. If you know some great technical storytellers, that would be great. If you go into the sort of the likes of Steve Jobs, the way I know we're not getting him now, but the way he used to go on stage and tell the story about the iPhone or these other things. I mean, he really connected technology with people, and he created a demand for something we didn't even know we had a demand for at the time. Yeah. So that's, if you got some great people like that regardless of whether I'd be, interested in talking to them, and we got some great people lined up already.
Well, and if you can bring Steve Jobs on your podcast, it could be the most watched podcast ever, or listened to.
It may be. I may have to challenge. I've read a lot about it. I've read a lot about his presentation thing. So it may be one of those things where I'm having him it's a dream sequence. I don't know. Maybe we're get into his head.
Yeah. So, so anything else you'd like to share before we close things out here?
No, I appreciate you having me on that one. Just know that everybody's got a story, and it's just simply just unlocking it, the tools to unlock it out of your head. And I'm happy to talk to you about how you might do that, especially if you're, again, a technical person. I find that they're very brilliant, but sometimes can't tell a story. And now if they're talking to other nerds, then the text explaining goes on. They're very good at that.
Right. Yes, they can do that very well. So, so you need to listen to Doug's podcast, Tech Story. You need to connect with him on LinkedIn. If you have any other questions about AI, he is the guy to reach out to. And I can't thank you enough for coming on Friday morning, and I've enjoyed having you on as a guest. As far as any other upcoming events, are you speaking or doing any virtual events coming up here in the next month or so? You want to?
No, I'm pretty much riding out the end of the year here. Everybody's sort of, hold up. Who knows if we got another wave of shutdowns coming on, what's going on. But I'll post those on I have a company speaking page on LinkedIn, the Doug Thompson. And I'm the Doug Thompson on Instagram and things like that. Because anybody could be a Doug Thompson, but the Doug Thompson is aspirational. It takes a lot to live up to that name.
Well, so does the Michael Goldberg, but I seem to be doing it every day. I'm just kidding. So I'd like to thank Sanal Ball, who checked in. Brian Beck, thank you very much. He does have, you may want to look at some of his other comments up here.
I'll check him out.
Brian, but he's very nervous about the cryptocurrency. Very nervous.
Brian, connect with me and send me a PM. We'll have a great discussion about that, because again, you brought up some things I hadn't even heard of before.
There you go. You could have him on your show.
Yeah, be interesting.
I don't know what his background is, but
I'll check it out.
Yeah,
we're talking. He asked some tough questions. I said,
he did.
Unfortunately, I don't know anything about those.
Well, you know what? It's okay to say I don't know. Rather you do that.
I would do that.
Right. So, thanks again, everybody, for joining. Please stay safe. Thanksgiving's here, but this is going to be a very different Thanksgiving for everybody. I'm not going to be on Tuesday. I'm taking a day off on Tuesday. So our show will be, this will replace that show. So maybe I'll post this again on Tuesday for those that want to see something, because I think this was an interesting discussion. I've learned a lot. I just can't thank you enough for being on the show here.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could just hold on for a second, I'll end the broadcast. Everybody be safe out there, wear a mask, and stay with your loved ones inside your house for Thanksgiving. Be well.